Procurement issues are very important for the way we do business within the public sector and within the health service, because we have certain obligations and legal requirements that are enforced by EU treaties, EU directives, and so on. And overall, the aim of any of procurement is really to make sure that you're not spending willy-nilly, that you look at the long-term purchases. So one example to think about is, you know personally that you're going to use a certain amount of toilet paper. But very, very few of us buy a year's supply or 2 year supply of toilet paper all at once. Okay? Even though we might actually be able to get a really, really good deal on that. There are practical reasons for that. No one probably has the space to store everything. But the idea is that if you know that it's a continuing long-term need, then you don't actually need to have that week-on-week or day-by-day expenditure. You plan for it and then you buy it in bulk. And really that's what procurement is trying to drive, that if you have your needs for the toilet paper, and let's say the entire street has a need for toilet paper, and then everything gets put in together, so your entire neighbourhood now is going to put in a bulk order for toilet paper and get a bulk discount for it. The same model was used recently for some of the One Big Switch campaigns, where if you get enough people who are interested in making that one big switch, then you have that bargaining power of a large number of people, which is much greater than you would have individually. So the legal obligations that the EU enforce are really all about transparency and that paper trail and fairness. And what you actually end up doing really depends on how much you're intending to spend. So if we kind of take this value of contract in the flowchart at the top, and this is just extracted from an EU document, by the way. If you've less than 5,000, really you can just get, straightforward quotes from people. So it's a relatively small spend, a small piece of equipment. It's not going to, majorly be to anyone's advantage or disadvantage to win that contract, let's say. But really you just get the quotes, pick the one you want the most. And I mean, an experience that we've had before in ordering something, I had been offered a deal of 499.50, and then later on in the year I went back to them and said, look, I'm in a position to get something now, so can you give me what's the price of it now, what's the quote? And he basically came back and said it was 5,500. Now, because that was above the 5,000 threshold, that means that I would have had to go and get at least 3 written quotes from different suppliers. And when I discussed this with the supplier who'd originally given me a sub 5,000 quote, within about 10 minutes I had a quote back which was just under 5,000, because it was enabling them to get the business without having to go through this whole rigmarole. If we're within that 5,000 to 25k range, you're basically looking to get at least 3 written quotes based on your formal written specifications. So you're looking at specifying what you want, and once you've specified what you want, you have to evaluate them according to a kind of a fixed set of principles. And really those principles should be decided on before you actually go looking for those quotes. And we'll have a look about those principles later on. So you pick whichever one scores highest, basically according to your requirements. And once you've done that, you can then tell the ones who didn't win why they didn't win. And that's an important part of the process of tendering, that the people who didn't win are entitled to know why, so that they can compete more effectively the next time. And then when you start going from 25k and up, it's much more formal. So you actually have to have a complete, almost like an advertisement, which is your tender. And what you're basically trying to do then is describe what you want and what criteria you're going to use to distinguish between them. And the concept of meat is the maximally economically advantageous tender, so the cheapest one in essence for you. So again, you're setting criteria on that. You're advertising on e-tenders definitely, whereas it's kind of optional for the sub 25. You may invite particular vendors because they're specialists in that area, and you can advertise in the Open Journal of the EU as well. if you just have pure price, you can basically just operate on the basis of price. But if you have other aspects that are involved, and typically you would, because you want to look at service contracts, you want to look at, the ability of an engineer to get out to you quickly. It may be more expensive for that, but in the long run, that's actually the most valuable for you. There may be a dialogue that goes on, so you might want clarification on exactly where is your engineer based. Are they in Germany? Are they in the UK? Are they in Ireland? And so on. And then, based on, again, on your scoring scheme, you have the highest scoring tender for that. And again, you're going to debrief the unsuccessful tenderers because they need to have that information to see can they improve next time. So that's the kind of large scale view of it. And typically you're kind of going to be in these rightmost ranges for the value of the contracts because, medium-sized lab equipment standalone might be in that 5 to 25 range, but often it's above that for any type of sophisticated equipment. When it's over this threshold, you go to that official journal of the EU. And as I say, it's possible to use direct invitation as well. And that basically means that you're looking at very specialist people, and you need at least 5 to ensure that there's sufficient competition so that the competition should hopefully give you a more economically advantageous price overall. And if you don't have that, you're kind of violating these treaties and directives. So one of the things that came up again and again is this idea of selection criteria. And the selection criteria are very, very important, and they have to be transparent for everybody. I've mentioned feedback several times so far, and feedback is really, really important. And the amount of feedback that you would give depends on the value of the submission in the first place. So if it's low, it may actually be just a phone call. You can just say, look, sorry, I wasn't able to go with you this time. Somebody else gave me a better deal. Okay? It's a kind of politeness and courtesy. If it's larger, you may actually have to have a meeting. So if you had a tender for 500,000, you may have to have a meeting with the people involved and give them a formal response back. Or you could, in some cases, it may just be that you can send them a formal document back explaining how they scored, why they didn't get it, and so on. And really that should happen within about 15 days. So within 15 days, if you're unsuccessful, you should get the name of who was successful, why you were not successful, and sort of what extra did the successful tenderer bring to the game. So did they give you a superb deal that couldn't be matched? Did they throw in freebies? Did they say it would be free reagents for 2 years, or whatever it happens to be? But you basically have to give them that kind of knowledge about why you made your decision, really. And again, the scoring system really drives all of this transparency. So your scoring system will have a bunch of different selection criteria. So here's a couple of examples of those selection criteria. You're looking at quality of service. What kind of post-sale service will they provide? What's the time frame? If you need it quickly, can they bring it quickly? What resources are they applying to the project? And what's the service costs? So all of these things are kind of as you'd expect in a way. It's nothing unusual or strange. And you can divide up these and give them proportion or percent weightings. So in this case, you can see that the overall cost actually is not the dominating feature here, because it's really only maybe what they're actually giving me is worth only 1/4 of the overall score that I'm going to give. Post-sale service is actually very important for me because I want to be really sure that they give a really good service. The time frame is somewhat important, but not hugely important, and so on. So this type of score, you can make it as finely granular as you like, and some of the professional tenders, I mean, there are services and companies out there who will help you with large tenders, and they have scoring sheets and scoring systems that they will actually use. And what I have done in recent tenders is that the company that did the tender for us, because it was about 800,000, and we wanted to make sure everything was done right, they didn't tell us the cost, so they let us weigh up everything else on the basis of these other aspects, so the quality of the equipment, and so on and so on. And to be honest, I wasn't entirely convinced by that approach because, as you all know, sometimes you might be willing to pay more and you might have a different impression of a certain piece of equipment if you're balancing up those kind of technical capacities versus the cost. And there may be a technical capacity that would be more valuable to you than an extra 5% in cost. So you may get much more bang for your buck, so to speak. So the scoring system should be weighted according to what you need, okay? So all of those different percentages are based on how you want to assess it and per your needs. And really, the people who are supposed to be the end users are the ones who have the technical knowledge and expertise to be able to evaluate things properly and score them. And once you've scored them, then you have your ranked list from top to bottom, and then you can make the case to finance, because look, this is the top one that we scored, these are the scores that we gave it, this is the one we want. And for large awards, you may need a competent team. And what I mean by that is you may have so many different aspects to that large award. You may need to have people who have expertise in lots of different areas. So you may need an IT person, you may need an analytical specialist, you may need a lab specialist, you might need a clinician, you may need a nurse, even an administrator. All of those things can all get pulled in together because you want to make sure that you really understand and accurately weigh all of these and accurately score them. But the long and short of it is, from a procurement point of view, it's very structured and it's a very formalized procedure. And that procedure really is to make sure it's as fair as it possibly can be.